We had the pleasure to speak to the legendary Gates McFadden about her time in the Star Trek universe, as well as her podcast, which has just launched its third season with some iconic guests like David Ajala, Todd Stashwick, and Sonequa Martin Green, and more. Of course, we had to ask Gates about her future in the Star Trek universe. Watch on to see our conversation, and check out the article linked below to listen to Gates' podcast series. If you'd like to see more interviews like this, hit that subscribe button. Gates, thank you so much for joining us here on Trek Central today. I'm going to jump straight into our lovely interview here and talk about the podcast. So let's talk about that. Many may not know, but what made you want to start this podcast in the first place?
Well, basically, it was Nacelle Productions. It was Brian Vogt Weiss who asked me. He said, "I'd like you to do a podcast." And I was sort of, what? Why? And he was very persistent. He kept asking me. And you know what? I find that in my life, I've said no to many things that have turned out to be just gifts and major things in my life. So I started to realize I was doing the same thing. And when he kept coming back, I went, okay, all right, I'm going to try. Let me try to do this. Because, you know, his belief in me was actually quite lovely. And he had me do voiceovers. And then we've ended up collaborating on Center Seat, which I really loved doing. Had so much fun helping get people to be on it, and I loved doing the narration. I thought it was very clever. So I have a nice working relationship with Nacelle and Nacelle Cast. I feel very lucky.
Fantastic. This sort of leads me to the next question. We're into season 3 of the podcast now. You've spoke to some fantastic people over the last 2 seasons, but who can we expect to hear from in the upcoming season?
Oh, well, I have some amazing people. I have Sonequa Martin Green. I have David Ajala. There's Doug Jones. There's Ethan Peck. There's Michelle Hurd. There's Todd Stashwick. I have some just amazing people. Connor Trenier. So I try to make a variety. I choose from all the different shows. I don't want it to just be a bunch of people from Discovery and then a bunch of people from this show. I like getting to know people from all the different shows because I actually really like all the different shows. There's many people I still would like to speak with. I loved all the cast of The Lower Decks. That show to me was just so superb. It was so funny. I love it. I don't know why it was canceled. And then look at all the people. There's another show coming out. You have all these people. Michelle Yeoh is doing the film. What has become clear to me is the range of actors in all of these shows. You would think there'd be a bad apple in one of the groups, but I have yet to meet someone I didn't actually really like. The casting folks do a good job with this show. They get people who are positive, who really, you know, believe in hope and all of that. There's something about the energy, and we feel it when we're at conventions. People are very friendly and very nice and very funny, and you know, they give a shit. And that's kind of great, right?
Definitely.
And so it's been a pleasure. I feel I've relaxed much more in this season than in the other seasons. I was like, can I really do this? I don't know. And I'm now enjoying it because it's like when you sit down on an airplane and you don't really know that person next to you at all, but then you start to have a conversation and suddenly you know so much about that person and you have commonality with that person. And that I have always loved. And there's something about that feeling that I get doing this podcast.
That's fantastic to hear, and I love that sort of like connection you make there about sitting next to somebody you don't know and getting to know them. Very inspiring, I must say. Speaking of which, can you tease any of the sort of conversation topics that come up in this upcoming season that you've had with guests? Also, we don't want to spoil anything, but can you give us a teaser?
Well, some people I've asked them, you know, which is something I think about a lot. How do you make your hard decisions? Like, what's your process? Because there's so many decisions, I feel, in this world we have today. So much stuff comes at us and we have to make decisions and choices. And how do you do that? You know, when you have home life and then you have your work life and the performative life. how do you make your tough decisions? And what are the things you're wrestling with now, the issues? I feel that one, I also like when you talk about family and your upbringing and background, I feel it tells me a lot about a person, even what kind of games they played as a child. It tells me something about them because I remember so well what I played when I was little. It was so much a part of who I really am in a funny way. And so if someone was an athlete versus someone who was very much in their room, um, already that tells you something. And then to see where it's gone in their life now, I don't know. I like things like that. I really only ask questions that I'm truly interested in knowing about. I know that I can find out all the projects they're doing on IMDb, so I don't need that performative part. I just want to, what do they remember about their youth? What are the good memories they had with their parents? I'm not an investigative reporter. I'm not trying to trip anybody up. I'm trying to get to know them, and that's really the truth. And I want them to be the best. The best things come out. Surprising memories sometimes come up. I had a couple times people said, I haven't talked about this before, and I love that.
I think it's really great to get that sort of eye-opening perspective there. And also, just as a quick question, you mentioned, what games people played when they grew up. Could you tell us maybe what game you played?
Man, I was into building houses with rocks, I would be given dolls and I would spend all the time building houses for the dolls or building, I only had my brother to play with, so we'd build army forts and the Air Force was over here. And I loved that urban planning in the dirt pile. I loved it. I mean, really, really was just like decorate and putting little things to make the streets and all of that. That's kind of my favorite memories of play. And I loved treasure hunting, like all the dumb rocks in our driveway. I was convinced there was gold or something, and I would spend hours collecting stuff in a bucket and say, Daddy, look, I've got all this stuff. And then he'd go, wonderful. And the next day he would, of course, put them all back out. But yeah, no, I think building was something I really liked to do a lot.
Very nice. That's a lovely story. So the past 2 seasons of the podcast are available right now. You've had some fantastic guests on there. But can I ask which of the episode of the podcast might be your favorite, or is there a particular favorite moment from the past 2 seasons?
Oh, that's tough because I've really had fun. I've loved, there have been moments where I just start laughing wildly because it's just really funny. Um, um, the moment, I think my double episode with Will Wheaton was a lot of fun because I thought he was going to be a little tricky. So even though I dearly love my Space Son, so I wanted to play games because I knew he was a game master. And so I thought, okay, let's do Never Have I Ever. Let's do a few things that are like that. And it really turned out to be a lot of fun. And I felt I did get some surprising answers on that one. I also felt my episode, the double episode with Nana Visitor, was very powerful. And I went with my instinct. I was, as I say in the second podcast, I was shaking on my way home, driving home, and I really felt I had to call her and say, I'm suddenly affected in a way that I wasn't the first time you told it. Would you be willing to come back? And I'd love to discuss this because it was really a major physical feeling I was having, and I knew that was reflective of what was going on in my processing the information. So that was wonderful as well. But then there's also the time when John Delancey didn't want to get off. Actually, he was enjoying the podcast interview, and he said, "No, let's go on." And I said, "Okay." And then I said some question that was some serious question, and he took the perfect comic timing beat and said, "Well, maybe I do have to go." And I just lost it with laughter. I mean, that was just perfect. So, I mean, there's moments like that. I love all these people. I've gotten to know them. I mean, the surprises like Jess Bush is on. Jess Bush is also a visual artist. She's extraordinary. and she's just put up her sculpture, her bee sculpture in New York City, and it's phenomenal, you know. And for someone who acts in one of the Star Trek series to also have this other side of her, or I guess it's all integrated, but it's just wonderful and impressive. And she's very impressive. So I've really enjoyed it. I feel it's a privilege to actually get folks to take their time to do it. And I don't do it on camera. I've been asked, why not? Why not? We'd love to see it. And maybe I'm wrong, but there's something about it just being a conversation between two people, and no one has to have makeup on, no one has to have their hair together. We're just talking, and it's like we're having a cup of coffee together. And I like that kind of conversation. It's more intimate, I feel, than if people knew camera. When I have a camera on me, it doesn't matter. There's some sense of, there is some sense of that. And so for good or bad, that's what I've chosen to do thus far.
Would you say the podcast gets very more personal than like a typical on video podcast because of the presence of no camera in a way? You're able to have that more sort of open conversation in a sense.
Well, I think you can go. Yeah, I think so. I think you can go deeper, but I'm not the judge of that. I feel it's very intimate at times, and I like that. I like that someone feels, especially when we're in the studio together and we're looking at each other. We're looking at each other. We're not looking at a screen. And there's a difference. Like, I'm looking at your face, but I can't actually see your eyes. So there is a difference, But I know that people who seem to like it feel that it's something that they can really fall into. It's like it becomes a deeper conversation. I'm not saying it can't happen on camera, because obviously it can. But I think just that's the way I've chosen to do it up till now. I'm not saying I'll never change my mind, but that's where I am now. I hope people like it that way, but we'll see.
Perfect. Following Star Trek Picard Season 3, which was fantastic, and we saw Dr. Crusher back doing some fantastic things, fans seem very excited about future adventures. We hear whispers of Star Trek Legacy. Would you like to return as Crusher once again if given the opportunity?
Oh, of course, because now, especially with two very different sons, I think it would be really interesting. And I still feel that the character we never saw enough of how she actually deals with her sons, and how you actually have to mentor your sons. And she was a single parent. And I know from single parenting, people really, they are involved in the major decisions that someone goes through in their lives. And so, yeah, I think there would be a lot of material. I don't think it's going to happen particularly, but I would love it to. And we could always do the Crushers. We could always do the Crusher Comedy Hour.
I personally love that. Will Wheaton, Ed Spielers, yourself, fantastic.
I think that could be good, right?
Somebody's writing that pitch right now, and it's being sent to Paramount. Well, Gates, thank you very much. That brings me to the end of this interview. And where can people find your podcast?
They can find it on all the normal websites, Amazon, Spotify, Apple. I mean, all of the usual suspects. It's there. Investigates. Gates McFadden Investigates. Who do you think you are?
Perfect. Well, hopefully everyone's going to beam down and check out the podcast and all the fantastic guests you've got coming up this season. So I hope they enjoy.
Thank you, Jack. Take care.